I'm like, little eye practice here. Is this going to do this? Let's pray. This will. Okay, good. So the aim today, I always like doing these little goals, is to develop a better understanding of the visual art of Kandinsky, its content, its form, and to hear the music of the time. Now, I've got to tell you, this is a tough lecture. This is tough for us to try to make you understand or open up your eyes a little bit, and it's really tough for you guys to understand. I think some of this stuff is the hardest works of art to understand. So if your mind is spinning a little bit, going, I don't understand any of this, I'm not getting it, that's okay. Just a little bit maybe will sink in, and then maybe it'll go a little bit. And I'm open to questions, you know, like, what the heck is that kind of stuff and so on. So we're going to be listening to the music of Schoenberg and Schulhoff and a few others. We're going to try to draw connections between the two of them. And maybe we should have a poll at the end that's, no, the art's worse than the music. No, the music is worse than the art. I can't understand, I can't hear it. Because it's all very tough.
And I interject something just here. What occurred to me, I just said it to Susan, how many of you have gone to concerts of new music and thought to yourself, oh, when will it end? When be honest.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So I bumped up, I typed in Google, modernism, why is the music so painful? And this wonderful explanation came. In an art gallery, you could go in, and if the painting is disturbing to you, you can walk away. You know, you can back off or something. But when you're at a concert, you're trapped. That's a huge difference, and I never thought of that. But it's true. You paid a lot of money, and you're, you know, it's your big city. You can't get out. So no wonder people, and as a teacher and an educator, I've always loved the fact that people love modern dance, right? But they hate modern music. And as a musician, I hate a lot of it myself. And Susan's so correct. It's a conundrum, really. We're much more open to modern dance, modern art, modern cuisine, you know. But when it comes to music, we Americans, we really prefer dead.
I'm actually beginning to like this stuff now, but I've been studying it and teaching it for probably 20 or 30 years. So it's taken a while till I actually put on maybe some Schulhoff. Schoenberg, not yet. I know that Linda and Cheryl were skiers. So I tried to ski once to Schoenberg's works, and he's 280, there's no rhythm. So you can't go like Bruce Springsteen, you know, if I could sing, I would sing some Bruce Springsteen and do some turns. But Schoenberg, you can't do that. I mean, it came up.
I'm amazed you didn't kill yourself.
I know, it came up on my iPod, and I was like, no, I cannot ski to this. So, as we did in the first lecture, how many people are here for the first one? Any repeats? Okay, a couple, good. So these are the elements of art, and then the elements of music, and how they're kind of related, if you want to get really intellectual about it. These are ideas from a colleague of mine from Fitchburg State. So the line is equivalent to rhythm, and when you're listening to this stuff today, think about whether you can, you know, tap your foot to rhythm, because my guess is you're not going to be able to. Shape is like melody, and often we sing melodies, right? Again, in music today, you're not going to be able to sing very many melodies. Modeling is shading, and it's kind of, for me, it's like harmony, giving you some depth in the work. Color, of course, is like tone color, and we're limited to just the piano, but I love listening to wind instruments as well. And instead of the violins of history and a Beethoven and Mozart, clarinets and horns and winds are coming back into the music more. Dynamics is related to size and space and perspective. Texture is what you want to feel in the artworks. You don't often feel the paintings, because if you feel Monet in the museum, you're going to be charged, I don't know how much, for ruining a painting. You don't want to do that. But texture is, and the layers of music is also textural. And form is two terms that I always use, the form and content. Form is what it looks like. What are the colors? What are the lines? Content is what it means. So sometimes when I see, you know, a contemporary impressionist style artwork, I'm wondering, yes, that's fine, but does it mean anything new? Is there anything new other than what's happening from the 19th century? So I'm pretty critical about some things. I showed this one slide last time too, just to show you how Manet creates a petticoat just out of some incredibly quick brush strokes. He just goes like boop, 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 and it's a petticoat. How did he do that? There's no details, there's no lace, but it reads as a petticoat. And it comes from the painterly use. That means using paint as an element from the 17th century. So we're not going to do any Manet today other than this, but I just wanted to remind people. So this is a Matisse. So I'm actually starting with Matisse instead of Kandinsky because he's a little easier to understand. So what he says in this quote is a composition is the art of arranging in a decorative manner the diverse elements at the painter's command to express his feelings. In a picture, every part will be visible and will play its appointed role, whether it's principal or secondary. Everything that is not useful in the picture, it follows, is harmful. So he's really simplified this a lot. See his mind, yeah. So he's gotten rid of a lot of really, extra details. And what we have is this woman who is arranging bowls of fruit and making the house nice. For a short while, I would get my garden and I'd put in flowers in the house, and then I had too many kids and I stopped doing stuff like that. But I really enjoyed it for a while. And what's interesting about this painting is that originally, if you see the original, there's a little edge of green down here. This is actually in Russia right now, so you have to travel pretty far to see the original. But it was in the US, and this green was what the background was. And before that, it was blue. Do you feel a difference? Do you feel a warmth from the red and the pink? I mean, it really works. And these simplifications, this is the fourth corner of the table that's only suggested, and he really does a good job.
Well, yes, stick with that for just a minute. So keys for musicians, of course, are like moods and modes, and the color of a key. It's like my mother taught me this when I was 2 up on the place, so she painted the keys: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, green, blue, violet, purple, red. She painted the keys, and so then she painted the music. And so when I play something, it's green. And I've had weird conversations with other musicians. They say, no, key of F is purple. So anyway, you can go down, it's a slippery slope. It's like mathematicians love prime numbers. There's nobody things that can't be divided. You're in a sort of another world. But to Susan's point, and what is really interesting, we respond to the red in the same way that Beethoven loved C. It's a very simplistic key, Mozart chose it in all the great works. The Symphony of Beethoven, the Missa Solemnis, the nature, the choral fantasy, they're all in the key of C. Why? Because it's sort of a, as Susan said, it's a warm key, but it also can be many things. Unfortunately, it's been politicized lately, and our country is now blue or red. That's kind of a perjury in the art world. But it's very interesting that the painting is so different. So the same thing, if I played the Moonlight Sonata, which is C sharp minor, it's a very dark murky key, it would be maroon. But if I played it in F, it would be. It's too bright. Can you hear it? Compared to. Or if I played it in blue, which would be, in my vernacular, it would be. the art world, color. So that the composer or the painter makes a real command decision what color they're going to basically work from.
So what is Matisse doing here? You know, I'd like to ask rhetorical questions, but if anyone wants to answer them, that's okay. And it's okay if you get it wrong, because you can't really get it wrong. But Matisse's work is on the left, it's a little pixelated. And Titian, one of the great romantics from the Renaissance, Venetian Renaissance, is on the right. And they both, what's different, what's similar to them? Do you see what they're doing? It's a party, right? We've all been at parties. Maybe we don't look like this at the party, lying down, but we've got a nude woman over here in the corner. Sometimes it's worse than it doesn't. But there's a nude woman there looking very suggestive. And here we have a couple of nude women. And interestingly enough, the criticism about those was that they were too flat. They don't show the rounded sensuality of a nude woman. They're just flat. But you do get, in these outlines, some of that rounded quality. We have music going on, we have flowers being gathered, we have a dance in the background, becomes a bigger picture later on. We have a couple people kissing, and they're sort of almost uniting in their bodies. And we have beautiful, I mean, how many of you ever wear pink and orange together at the same time? Well, you do. But most people wouldn't because they would clash, right? Matisse can add these clashing colors, and it works just fine. It's kind of interesting. Okay. And that's probably good enough. I always have a lot of text on these because I want to remind myself of what to say, but you don't have to read the text unless you can read and listen at the same time. But this is an interesting thing because it also relates to music. In the first place, knowing that many people like to think of a painting as an appendage of literature. In other words, for centuries, the paintings illustrated the Bible, or illustrated historical battles, or portraits of historical people. Things change around 1900. So it's no longer an appendage of literature, and therefore they want to express the general issues, ideas, suited to pictorial needs, but specifically literary. I didn't do that very well. So the idea is that you're not being literary. Here, Bastien Lepage from the 19th century is kind of illustrating Joan of Arc. Now, Matisse said, I don't want anything extra in the painting. There's a lot of extra stuff on this painting. There's Joan of Arc back here in this vision that she's having right here. But you don't really need all this extra stuff. And Matisse will delete it or just render it in terms of bright, exciting colors instead. So we're moving because what was the invention in the 19th century that changed how artists look at things?
Electric light? Edison?
No. In fact, I bet all of you have one maybe in your pocket right now, or in your purse, or in your cuff. It's not the phone so much as the camera. The camera is what the artist. So the artists, everybody can take pictures now. Well, it takes a while for them to develop the iPhone camera, but they can all take pictures. So therefore, you don't need to have a realistic image of people or things. You can start expressing the inner feelings of the artist, and that's what they're doing. Now, Matisse also, he's such a great minimalist. All you need are just a couple of lines up here. You're missing some definition, but you know that that's the shoulder, the elbow going up. You get this sense of the lyricism. You don't need a lot of extra stuff like Carpeau has put into his dance. So, you have anything you want to say?
Sure. Let me demonstrate atonality in this piano piece of Schoenberg. It's early, Opus 11, so he's probably in his 30s. He's pitted G against G flat. It was tonal, G and G. And then he goes on to do So how can that ever be beautiful? But, you know, there's the sort of the question. So it goes. So that motif. But he changes the underpinnings each time. It's static, and then it moves. And again. So it expands 3 times in a row. He gets away with murder because it's really unlistenable. It's like a toothache, and then he goes. So the challenge for me, to make that accessible, I have to stagger it. I layer it. It's like feeding a child. You start with a small, begging with the spoon, and then you bring the spoon again, and you say, come on, kiddo, and the child is being difficult, and then you take, your head and you say you're going to eat. That's what he's doing here. He's introducing you to it, and it's my challenge not to ram it down your throat, but to invite you into that sound. So how am I going to do that? Well, it's almost like playing with color, like a watercolorist or like one of Susan's paintings. There could be a degree of intensity, or I have to make the command decision. He's dead, I'm alive, so I'm gentle. And I'm not so gentle. And then he goes off, so he's a little off the There's no pattern. He's just playing with color and with lots of sound.
Where's the melody? Can you sing this?
No, it's gone. We heard those intervals earlier. So it's like a little sort of echo. And all the music coming out of the late 20s and 30s, primarily made in Vienna, is all going to sound like that. It's being composed in Prague, mainly in Vienna. For some reason, not in Paris so much. Always in music, there are sort of schools or kind of a bouquet or a clutch. And like the next one, this is very different. For me, and I've been playing music all my life, and I play about 35 concerts a year still, I could never memorize that. That is, and I'm supposed to be a whiz bang. So you always have to have a score. And there's something pure about that, but there's also something very limiting. Because I know when I am on stage, I had a big concert in Hartford just last night. I would rather not have the music. I would rather be relating to the sound that I'm creating in space with my brain. I don't really, you know, do you feel that way when you're painting, Susan, that you know, so many artists, they make a sketch or, you know, with pencil or something underneath the finished work? Or do you always stick to the sketch? Don't you want to go sort of off the...
Well, lately I haven't been doing pencil, I just do ink directly onto the page, and then I color pastel, and then I go back over the ink again. But I try to be very in touch and in peace when I make my first ink things. It's taken a while. I mean, it's scary. It's like, you got this piece of paper, or maybe a great big piece. If it was huge, like as long as that, half as long as the wall, and I have some pieces like that, I probably would mark some things down in pencil, but when they're small.
But the problem in music is I have to sell this really hard, you know, if I've been hired in an art museum, I have to somehow make this saleable. And something like, you know, I can sell that, you know, overnight. And selling this is really, there used to be a festival here called Banana Music, and it still sort of goes on, but it's mainly meals and it's party. And Jim Boley started it, and he would always have some kind of experimental piece of music on the program with you know, famous dead men. He would sort of introduce, it was like introducing a smoothie made of kale and saw, you know, and straw and sawdust or something. And everybody on the program would sort of, okay, here comes the health food music sort of. But it would only last for maybe 10 or 12 minutes. It was sort of like, take your vitamins or, you know, swallow this. And it's good. It's good to hear intervals.
These pieces by Schoenberg that you were just playing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah. And he's a genius. He's iconic. I mean, he goes down in the history books because what he did was invent the tone row.
Yes, that's beyond our purview.
Okay, all right.
So you have two questions. One, modern jazz.
Yes.
Like Anthony Braxton.
Yes.
Where do you put that in this?
That's a great thing you threw into the mix. Well, jazz, you know, Arthur Dove did a whole series pairing it with Gershwin way back in the 20s. It's even called Bridge, you know, Blue Bridge and things like that. Modern jazz is very much like Bach, though. The great jazz musicians, they lay down, you know, take the hear the melody, always, and then they develop it. But that Bach was doing that, and the great jazz pianists, and the best example of that, of course, is Dixieland, because they start with the melody. The announcement.
Braxton is completely different.
That's right. No, now you get into Keith Jarrett, that's very recent, that's...
It'd be great to do a jazz day, because I'd love to talk about Pollock and Rothko and how they
We can do it.
jazz.
We can do our last one if you want to go off the deep end with jazz. I'm all for it.
So the other question was about the pink and
Orange.
because when you put the two together,
It's like that. If C is red, C sharp then is maroon, then D is orange. And so.
you get the vibration.
Right, exactly. And that would be, you know, in the Renaissance, would be an embellishment or a trill because the instruments died. The decay was here, you know, so reverberant. So this.
So now we're going to go on to this. What do you think this work is of? It's actually, there is an actual event behind this, if you can figure it out. Well, and the main point, or the hint, is this great big black triangular thing.
No,
What is it?
looks like a hun.
Well, sometimes his work does do that. And sometimes his work goes on many different levels. Like you're gonna see a mountain, I'll see something different. Cheryl will see a cat, or something like that. Yes, he does. But it's musical. It's a musical thing. Big black triangulars, and now this was cheating a little bit because we don't have the big black triangular. It's a piano, grand piano here. This is a grand piano, and this is a concert. And my question is always, what do I sometimes think these are the people. Maybe those are the backs of chairs. Maybe they're line, they're notes of melody or something. Maybe they're people's heads. And that's what's cool about abstraction sometimes, because it can be many different things at the same time.
Well, you were talking earlier, but when did he make the concept that a really good painting reads upside down, right side up?
I don't think I've gotten to that one yet. That's really interesting. It's probably coming here, right here. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, right. That's right.
I just wanted to say, and this one, there are different kinds of German expressionism. So I just wanted to make this point quickly. The one on the right is more angular, urban, snotty, definitely brilliantly colored, but a little claustrophobic kind of art. Whereas the German expressionists in the country drew much more relaxing, rounded, rural things, more like what we might feel and see in the Monadnock region for sure, than say New York or Boston or something like that. I mean, this is Berlin, but what the heck. So that's just a little bit of an aside. But what happened here is that Kandinsky, I think personally, he had a little too much of that German brew. And he'd drink it a little bit, came back at night, got into his studio, and he sees one of his pieces from this period on its side. And he says, oh my goodness, you can create a feeling of a big white fluffy thing, or maybe green shapes with angles that are not necessarily just trees or a cloud, or maybe, a train or something, that you can create and communicate through just the shape and the color and the line alone. It doesn't have to represent something. So that was major, a major development. So in 1911, just about that same year, Kandinsky goes to a concert that is playing works by Schoenberg. In fact, I think he was the actual player. So here you have this great big black triangular thing again, but you can really see it as a piano, I think, and the concert. And so Kandinsky does these sketches during the concert, and then he just goes hog wild and starts doing things that are very non-objective. If we're going to be really picky about terminology, non-objective means that it's not based on anything in reality, really. An abstraction is when you take the apples by Cezanne and you make it bigger, smaller, you cut them up, but it's still recognizable as an apple. But here, Kandinsky's going to go into brand new territory, and Schoenberg's going to echo that a lot. So just a little bit of, I don't give you Kandinsky's background, but just a little bit of Schoenberg's background. Again, Vienna being the spot of the second Viennese school, just as Virginia was saying. And I would like to say that artists work in little groups like that also. It's not just the musicians. So I've done this lecture, excuse me, on Kandinsky for classes and stuff like that, where I get really into all these quotes. And I just think it's probably too much to deal with right now. But I didn't want to lose them, because I never know quite what I really want to mention. But he's talking about jumping spots. And each tone kind of stands on its own like these white shapes do. So even if you just look at this painting, do you see, usually if you're going to create something, let's say if it's a dog in the middle of the room, what's the first thing you do? You do an outline, right? An outline of the dog. And then you color in the brown coat and stuff like that. There might be a lamp, but you have a lamp also outlined. But here, do we have outlines to these shapes? We actually have lines that that are just, they're just as lines. They're not outlining shapes. So my terminology for this is that he's freeing color from line and line from color. So you can just put lines down, you can put color anywhere, and it doesn't have to be a little doggy or something like that. Does that make any sense?
There's a cat on the left hand to my eyes, whiskers.
Well, that's the thing, is that with Kandinsky, I can never really yell at my students if they'd see a cat and I'd say, I don't see that as a cat. But you just have to tell me what you see. And you can say, I see 3 little whiskers and a little green face. And you can say, okay, you know, my students would have backed up their idea with something visual. I disagree, but that's okay.
There's a dancer in the top left corner. And there's a bird. Where's the bird? Oh, yeah, there's a bird flying around. And it looks like a stingray off to the right of the bird.
I gave her some LSD before this talk, so that you can see all these things.
It doesn't have to look like something. It's like flowers. Yeah.
It does, it's just, and what's the mood that you get from Kandinsky's things?
Playful.
Yeah, I think they're full of joy usually, because I sometimes feel like he's saying, I discovered I can be totally free of painting and boom, boom, boom. So there's this like joy. But maybe some of that rap is a little melancholy, like some of the music that she was playing. And just to note that he was an accomplished pianist and cellist as well. So he knew that he would be practicing the music, probably thinking about how that could be related to his paintings. So Schoenberg was actually a painter also. Not great paintings, but don't you get a sense of sound coming from that guy's mouth? Which is really kind of cool. And so after that concert, actually, Kandinsky wrote Schoenberg, and they were close for a while, until somebody told Kandinsky that that Kandinsky was anti-Semitic, and then their friendship broke down. But Kandinsky said, no, I'm not anti-Semitic, but, so they're really talking about appealing to the unconscious, and that's another Schoenberg painting on the right, kind of scary. It's a little like Monk's Scream. I probably should have put Monk's Scream up there. They're both a little,
sidebar.
Yes.
Alma Mahler had 3 husbands and a big affair with, one of the major.
Gropius and with,
Gustav Mahler, Gropius, and then a Broadway sort of musical. But she was standing the 2 dancers at the MFA in Boston. Who's that? The famous.
oh, Kirschner, it was Kirschner.
No. But she was a composer. She wrote like 9 songs. But when she married Mahler, he basically consigned her to being his copyist. He was a big dog husband. And her songs are very beautiful, actually. And she belonged to a whole clutch of very talented women, another woman named Alma Rosé, who was a violinist, and her father, Victor Rosé, was concertmaster of the Vienna Philharmonic, and he left when Hitler came into power and got to London. And like Freud and like a lot of Jews, they couldn't believe, because of course, communication was nothing like it is today. The camps were going full bore by 38, by 40. And it's not, they were full bore till 44, actually. And Alma Mahler, she walked across Spain. I mean, having just been in Europe 2 weeks ago, those mountains are formidable. It'd be like walking barefoot across Monadnock or something. And she apparently traveled with suitcases, and she was like a prima donna. She was like the woman from hell. And it's a sad story. The Alma Rosé lady is the polar opposite. She was a violinist, and she stayed behind and shipped eventually to Auschwitz, and she forms the major orchestra there. And she would stand with the Nazi people are coming off the train. We need a bassoon, we need a violin, and she saved like 600 people. So it's perverse though. And then they would play. Mainly Wagner would mainly play German composers, while Jews and Catholics and anybody, homosexuals, the Nazis have hatred of almost everybody at that point.
By the way, that last looked like Andy Warhol.
That's what I was.
It doesn't.
Yes, you're right. Good spot, yeah. It could be a monkey, it could be a monkey, or it could be an African mask.
I don't know whether Warhol actually knew Schoenberg's work, but he might have.
And in another sidebar to the genius of Schoenberg, it almost came, his studio, how many of you have ever gone to the rare, if the BPL, you put on gloves, you go to the rare book room, have you ever done that? Well, it's very interesting. It's like going to the Library of Congress. It's in Boston, and you go there, and they have the studio of Kusevitsky, and they have the studio also of Piston, and his wife was a painter. You could go into the literal room, just like pig trash in the waste paper basket. It's spooky. And Schoenberg, his heirs, gave his glass studio to USC, and I, being a Californian, that's when I did a lot of radio, I went there and did an interview, and the problem was it was never open, because there are many musicologists who regard Schoenberg right up there with Beethoven. They feel that he moved the needle. And I have to say, in all disciplines, when somebody comes along, it's mainly been men, but there have been some formidable women, the Curie lady with radium. Anyway, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but the Schoenberg studio was eventually broken down because they never had a curator, so you couldn't go there to study his scores. So what was the point of it? And the heirs offered it to us at Northeastern, and we sort of wondered, what will we do with this? It's like a whole room full of music, full of paintings, and you'd have to insure it, and then you'd also have to pay a curator or a musicologist to be there answering, requests and things. So we passed it by, and I always wondered, what happened to all that? What the scores and the paintings, it was like a treasure trove of his genius. It's really a sad thing to contemplate. They were so urged that we Americans didn't value it or something. I wonder if it went back to Vienna or whatever happened to it. Yeah.
But I just want to talk about the color yellow for a little bit. If you were thinking about if you're going to make a painting with yellow, what kind of shape would you do? What do you think that yellow is in terms of shapes and
Around the sun.
That's what I would do. Back to kindergarten, the little yellow sun, nice and round and everything else. But Kandinsky felt that yellow was a bright color, that it hurts your eyes. And so that's why I think he has so much yellow up there, because Schoenberg's music might have hurt his ears a little bit. I'm not sure. Or it was pushing the envelope or whatever. And sometimes, okay, I already did that one. So sometimes if you see, you're not supposed to look at the sun. But if you look at the sun on water, on one of our many lakes, it is bright. It does hurt your eyes. You do have to turn away from it. So I think Kandinsky had a point about yellow being sort of sharp and maybe horn-like. I think I've sometimes seen that way.
What I like,
So I'm like making music
like
point.
Schulhoff, Erwin Schulhoff, who was a Czech composer, and again, it's going to be very atonal, but it's more spread out than Schoenberg. And again, it's going to have, instead of being consonant, it's dissonant. So my challenge is to, just like when you look at a fish tank, I'm always amazed. They never touch each other. You know how fish, they're so artful. They just sort of, a big fish will go right up close to a little one and they sort of back away. It's really, it's amazing. They never bump into each other. So that is my challenge, to sort of not bump into the ugliness. So what the hell is happening here? It's just willy-nilly, it's mumbo-jumbo, it's anything that I want to sort of, there's no melody, the right hand goes, so what is it? It's pink and orange, purple and red, black and yellow. It's
It's also primitive.
yes, oh, of course, it's very naked. Yeah, it's very naked.
I taught Pittsburgh State for 27 years, and I asked my 4 music colleagues if they, when I was teaching Schoenberg as a part of the art course, I said, do any of you go back at home and turn on Schoenberg?
Well,
I'm
that's
100% no.
That's not
No.
fair, because there's a very, very beautiful work, Transfigured Night, Verkleckte Nacht. And it's early Schoenberg, and it's pure Wagner or Mahler. Susan, oh, it's Transfigured Night.
But it probably
There's a
has more
string quartet
different-
version, and then it's for string orchestra. It will tear your heart out. It is so beautiful. So just like all great geniuses, they have different periods. They start usually very academically. If you look at early Picasso, it looks like Goya. And then he matriculates, and he has the different, same thing with composers, if they live long enough. They have chapters, the rose period, the blue period, the black period, whatever. Depending on models or lovers or, look at Beethoven's fractured life. The guy is deaf, he's pouring water on his head, he's evicted from every place he lives, but he leaves behind this unbelievable 9 symphonies, choral fantasy, a mass, chamber music, songs, hymns. How is this possible? He's so dysfunctional, and he has, I learned recently, he has what it's called irritable bowel, so it's like diarrhea. That's bad. That is really bad in 1840. That on top of everything else,
What if symphonies do that? Show this sort of bubbling of intestine. No, I'm serious. It's like the fourth symphony.
it's just remarkable that some people, in the face of real adversity,
They still do so much.
they forge on.
Well, I used to listen to this music historian, and he listed Mozart's ailments that went like this for the
Yes.
last month of his life.
Right.
It's like, think about that when you're cold.
Well, and Goya went deaf. So did Beethoven. They went deaf, because they painters licked. They were imbibing in lead. They were licking, if they ran out of turpentine, they used spit. Come on, that's pretty fatal.
But, so it's from one of my interdisciplinary courses, I use this great textbook. And so this is Cubism, which I'd like to talk about after the new year. And the colors are duller, but there's a lot they're doing with space, which also echoes, again, music, how fragmented and angular the music is. And you can hear that in the sharpness of what Eskin is playing, and more dissonance and stuff like that. But I think that's all too much. So, here are some other Blue Rider artists. Can you see some things in here that you can recognize? Okay, it's a lot more accessible, I think, than some of the Kandinskys. Munter was Kandinsky's wife. Jelinsky was actually Russian. He did some wonderful portraits. And here we have a real playing of color in the trees and elsewhere. And then again, Jelinsky. I really love these. I love early modernism and abstraction and the joy and discovery of doing new works. It's a big influence on my own work. Did you want to play anything by Picasso?
Sure. Again, this is she died on the transport on the way to Auschwitz. young Czech woman who specialized in recorded all the music. So she's very, very melancholic, but it also, she puts in, because sirens in Europe, goes, and in our country, a siren, the ambulance or fire engine is, and just having been in Paris 2 weeks ago, over and over you hear those intervals. So composers are, of course, very alert orally. And this piece is from a suite that she wrote just before she's creates a large tapestry. It's very limited material, but it's quite a send-up.
I'm not sure I have an artwork to go with that. That's a Cezanne on the left, what's that left over? But it's interesting that the melancholy and the despair that you hear so much of this music is.
That's a very odd painting, isn't it?
Well, he's definitely thinking about death, obviously. And he does have quite a few. Actually, I think I put that in there because I thought this was going to be for our last lecture, which was a little bit about Cezanne. So I put that in there. So the other thing is, yeah, question.
Whose painting was that? I didn't get the.
Cezanne,
Okay.
Cezanne.
Okay, I didn't know, didn't know.
Sometimes I mumble.
But he's so cheery as a maker. You can think of his incredible odalisques and,
For the mountains.
it's grim reaper.
The other thing that's interesting is how they explore the unconscious, the artists and the musicians at this time. And of course, you've got Freud's analysis of dreams and all that stuff. That entered a lot more into surrealism as a movement, which we may talk about at some point. But it also influenced the other painters too. So this is a little bit about synesthesia, which both Schoenberg and Kandinsky were interested in. Do you know about synesthesia? That's when you sort of taste things that are blue, or you see things that are in color. Or in terms of my son, the chart on the right is what I made up of my son, John Bordley, is a musician and teacher in New York City. He's got his MA from NYU, etc. But when he was trying to help me hear music, because I hear absolutely nothing, and he could draw absolutely nothing, so we share our talents in reverse ways. So I said, John, how do you know what key people are playing? Because she's like C sharp, see the difference? I'm like, how do you know this? And he said, oh, because of the colors, Mom. And I said, the colors? And he said, yeah, each key has a different color. But if you go online and you look up A flat or A sharp or something, someone else is gonna have a different color. It's not like everybody agrees that these are the synesthesia colors, and then as he got to be a better musician, I think the color thing sort of faded and you could just tell that it was D major or whatever. But the idea of synesthesia is behind all these sort of artists. And that's something that Kandinsky wrote up a chart about colors, the feelings, the emotions of instruments and the sort of other parts of the world.
I mentioned the ambulance or the sirens in Europe, and I should have played her other pieces. It goes. That's really the siren in Europe. And when people are rounded up, go to prison or something. But in Kandalis, that same suite, the slow movement is very childish. It's playful, like it's paintings. It's like a little, Czech folk song or something. It's like la 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 la, and then at the very end it goes. It blew my mind because I was in France for the last 2 weeks. And you hear it all the time. Every time there's a police or a fire engine, or it's so different than in our country. When you get an ambulance or a fire engine.
It's unusual. Like if you're in New York, there's always a siren going on in the background.
I don't know
So
why
much in the Manhattan area.
you have to be a fireman to research it or something. Why do we always have that long wail sound?
Somebody decided that. So what do you see in this painting? Do you see anything? I always think of Mount Monadnock. Am I crazy to think about Monadnock? Does anyone else see a great big blue mountain there? Right there. And sometimes then what are these things? Do they look like towers, maybe? And then sometimes, Kandinsky objected when people said that he was actually painting music. But I think sometimes he had musical ideas in his mind. So if I was going to listen to it, pretend that those lines were, something musical, I'd think of a cello or bass.
Or you could also think of Gershwin. Soaring.
Yeah, I like that.
Susan,
Yes.
what I see is a juxtaposition of city and country. To me, those are towers, New York City, skyscrapers, and right next to it to the right of the Alps, like mountains.
Oh, I never saw those as mountains. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it looks like.
I see Jaws.
It's sharp and a rainbow, and I don't see musical notes. Where do you see those?
Well, I don't see notes, but I see big fat strings that just remind me of a bass or a cello or something like that. And since he was a cellist, so I think if each of us were to write something about this painting, each one would be totally different about what we're seeing. Whereas if you see something like Guernica or famous other paintings, it's like, okay, well, you got a figure here, we're all going to see that same figure. But I just love Kandinsky. And I think we're probably running short on your grades. Anyone have any comments or questions or, whatever?
Do you want me to play a little tiny bit of Alvin Barrett, who's
Sure.
also.
Well, let me say something before that, because you mentioned the Monadnock Music Festival. They played at one point at the Jaffrey Meeting House many years ago, probably a dozen years ago. They played the Lyric Suite by Alvin Barrett. And I just knew a little bit about him. And I was totally blown away because it was so cool. It's about a relationship. And sometimes the note letters relate to the letters of the names of people in the relationships. And sometimes it was harmonious. A lot of times it wasn't so harmonious. And there were like 5 or 6 parts to it. So Bear is more accessible for me than Schoenberg. I go home and put on Bear. I won't put on Schoenberg.
You're right,
You're right. In a painting like this, let's say you're painting, where would you have started?
Probably just with some great big sweeping shapes, you know, just maybe a piece of chalk or charcoal.
So
just
you
to-
large
Or-
and then concise.
Yes, and you don't suddenly get all detailed about one little area. You sort of build it all up at the same time. And probably instead of charcoal, I should say just very diluted paint, so that it's mostly very light. Then you can build it darker and darker and darker and have more and more paint in it.
So
Which is
the
good.
process is a really important component.
Totally.
of How you do it.
And being free, and I think a lot of times you just have to be secure enough to be free and not think, what are they going to think of me if I do this? You just do it. And luckily for artists, we're not there when everybody says, boo! You know, like if you go to a Schoenberg concert that Eskin is putting on and you don't like it, you can say, boo! And then be really obnoxious like they did with Kandinsky's Rite of Spring when it was first played and
through that
years.
through.
But artists can just, you know, do what they want, put the pieces up on the wall and go hide. And they don't really care so much. And I'm not sure where the heck the swan is in here. Maybe that is a little bit of a swan. I don't know, but there was one time when I was preparing a lecture on Kandinsky to be given at the School of Visual Arts in New York City. I went to the Museum of Modern Art and saw some of his work beforehand, and man, I related to that work more than I ever have before or since, because I was just so in his head, and I could just feel the vibrations that they're talking about in terms of the color and the shapes and just the energy that's in them. But I totally, you know, my father and my mother collected like the typical Vermont paintings of a little white house, and a little red barn, and some trees, and that was nice. And they didn't understand what I was trying to do in art at all. And I always feel like I'm trying to explain my father, but I'm now the age of my father, but anyway, trying to explain to him what's going on in abstract art. And I failed miserably, whatever I tried. But that's okay, you paid for grad school, that's good.
I kind of come from the background of realism, like your parents, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not a keen lover of quote-unquote modern art. But I think there's a beauty in this, in that what I see, based on my experiences in my art, what's in me, is different from what she sees. And that's good. That's I can get something out of that. She can't, but
But you can have a talk about it. She can say, but I really like that part because.
I can just appreciate it.
Yes. And if you don't like it, as Virginia said, you walk on to the next meeting and you're not stuck there. And that's my problem with a lot of modern video artists. Is sometimes they're just really boring and you sit there for 5 minutes watching someone sleep and then you're never going to get those 5 minutes back again. And so I have trouble with video art. I need to know that it's going to be pretty special.
2 minutes of Bear, so just for this music little tutorial. So Schoenberg is in the sound. That's Schoenberg. That's very intellectual. And I could memorize and I could play the Barrett Sonata because listen to the difference. like blocks of sound. So they're both genuine. I'm not saying one is better, but they are violently different. So why is that so? I can memorize that. I did. To your point, you fell in love with Alvin Rare, but it's interesting. I don't have an answer because it's really not my area of expertise, this whole German school. No, as an American pianist, I would have played it, as a student or something, but I'm not going to go and make a career on concert stages playing this. I would never get any bookings. So, but it's interesting that Berg, because they're all the same age, but he wasn't a painter, he wasn't as involved, and he didn't live.
But there's an eerie beauty when you started that piece that drew me in.
Well, because so if it was tonal, it would go. It's the same notes, but I've just taken away the sharps and the flats. I've taken out all the chromaticism. I've taken out all the jagged edges. I've made it, sort of like, prettified, which is what most Americans want when they go to a concert. And I don't know whether it's because in schools we've never talked about, who knows? We're all victims of our upbringing and of what our children, what our parents, as children took us to. I grew up in a household of jazz. My father was in Paul Wagner's band, so this is not mother's milk to me at all. But I respect it, of course.
So who wins? How many people so I'm going to ask you, and you don't have to respond, but do you like the music better, the art better, neither, or both? So how many people like the art better? How many people like the music better? How many people like both? Neither?
But I find this painting really busy and sort of.
There's a lot to look at.
It's very fussy.
I don't know whether fussy is what a term I would use, because to me, when you're trying to get all the details of a realistic painting, that's when you can be fussy.
There's a powerful improvisation.
There's a pattern that your eye flows through those green lines and the four main blocks of design.
It's
I find it joyful.
It's good. It's
blossom.
If I can just open your minds a little bit, because it's taken me 30 years of study to actually appreciate the music for sure, and the art as well. So if you can just open up your mind a little bit, and then next time you see something, there isn't a lot of abstraction in this room, but maybe the next show there'll be abstraction, and you can say, oh, well, maybe I should look at it this way.
But you could also, we never play devil's advocate. You could also pair it with a Scarlatti piece. It's joyful and sprightly and crazy,
You see that paintings at every part.
Or Satie, exactly.
Yeah, I do, and that's why we have such an open society, and people are not getting dragged off to concentration camps like they were. I think some of that melancholy reflects that history. Anyway, this was a lot of fun. I'm so glad you came.
Thank you. Participating. It's always